What's up, guys? In this episode of Toilet Talk, our guest host is Chad. He's the co-owner of Halftime Rentals, and these folks are in growth mode. They went from 1 driver to 5 drivers in 2 months due to Hurricane Helene. And we're here to talk about routing. Chad will share some of his wisdom of how he organizes his routes and handles those last-minute changes, especially as they've gone through this explosive growth. So make sure you stick around to the end. Let's jump right in. All right, Chad. So why do you think that routing is often described as one of the most difficult parts of running a portable toilet rental business?
So I would just say that shit happens throughout the week, and routing is a crucial part of how your business operates. I always tell people that I basically run a logistics company. I think we have 470 something active job sites right now, or active rentals, and it never goes as planned. So I'm constantly changing the routes for the next day, for the next hour, for the next 6 hours, whatever it may be. New deliveries, new pickups. Yeah, long-winded way of saying you always have to be changing and optimizing your route if you want to provide the best customer service.
Routing keeps you on your toes. What are some of the headaches that new folks that are getting into the industry when it comes to routing? What do you think the biggest mistakes that they make are?
Yeah, documenting what are the days or times or special requests that certain of your sites have. And when you get into routing, then you completely forget about the sites that need servicing on a specific day or specific time, and you optimize the route. And you don't have documentation on why you have certain sites on certain days. And then you start moving them around and you realize, oh shit, I got myself into a bit of a pickle here because I really pissed off some of my biggest customers because they requested a certain day or time and I didn't document that and then just went about my route or my routing as I normally would. So that'd be my one advice, is have a great system for documenting why certain stops are on a certain day or on a certain driver, or ability to get into a certain site. Document.
Great advice. You guys grew very quickly in a short amount of time, and you had to take on more drivers. How do you get your drivers comfortable with their route when they start and the tools that you guys use?
I always say that I have a very high level of expectation, but a very high level of forgiveness. And it's more so on myself than it is on my drivers getting comfortable. I have to be comfortable with them making mistakes early on. I know that they are going to make mistakes, mess things up, not be comfortable the first week or 2 weeks. And I just have to be comfortable with that. I think the best way to learn is correcting the mistake as it happens. I can try to train them as much as possible up front to be comfortable with their route, but inevitably something's going to happen where they're going to have to learn the hard way or think that they aren't going to be able to hit a stop, when I then have to come back and say, okay, here's how you should have done that. I can only prepare so much, and I just have to be comfortable learning the hard way with the drivers. And I use a bit of the human element going to those customers and saying, hey, we had a new driver. They weren't comfortable with your stop. They didn't understand the nuances. We will make it right. We're going to come back next week. They know now how to do this correctly. So I take it more of myself than the drivers feeling comfortable. I do send them on routes with other drivers for training, but ultimately just know they will make mistakes and we'll correct them at the beginning right as they happen, and have a super high level of expectation, but a very high level of forgiveness too.
I like that. How do you see them taking ownership of their routes?
As time goes on and as they become more comfortable with me, they are more willing to give suggestions on, hey, here is how we should service this stop, or here's a stop that we should do, or here's what I would recommend on my route. And in this business specifically, I think a lot of our drivers have come from a background of you go do your job and you better not make mistakes. I'm going to come down on you if you make a mistake. And it takes a while to train that out of them, where I came in from a lens of, I want you to be here, part of the team, and give your feedback on how we can improve our processes internally. And trust is built over time. They ultimately will become comfortable and know that they can give me feedback on, like, hey, dude, I can't work 4 a.m. to 7 p.m. This route was insane. And sometimes I just don't see that level of detail until they tell me and give me that feedback, and then realize, hey, you can give that feedback and bad things aren't going to happen to you. And that trust is built over time, and that communication is built over time. And I obviously encourage open lines of communication, but I encourage them to give me feedback on their routes.
Nice. I'm sure over time it builds better customer service too, because when they have ownership over that route and really care about it, your customers are going to feel it.
Yeah, absolutely. I also try my hardest to balance positive encouragement versus criticism. Everything I do, I end my posts or whatever on social media with encourage more than you criticize. And I try to give that feedback back to them. I talk a lot about correcting errors as they happen, but I also am very diligent. If I get a call from a client and said, hey, your driver did a fantastic job, he came and talked to me, we moved some things around so we could get to that, I make sure that I relay that positive feedback back to them.
So you mentioned it earlier, but one of the biggest headaches is things are going to change throughout the day. Inevitably, you're going to get that request for an emergency, or you need to run to a different service, but the driver's already left the yard and you have to deal with it. So how do you make changes in the middle of the day, and how have you done it in a way that helps not create chaos, but smooth things over?
Yeah, it all starts with expectation setting early on. So I tell them when I hire them that your days are going to be slightly chaotic, and that the way you start your day may not be the way you end your day. And I expect you to be open to being a team player and helping out however you can to make sure we get shit done the way that we need to. So it starts with that expectation up front. And then when inevitably it happens and I call them and I'm like, hey, I need you to ignore the rest of your route. I'm going to put a stop on your route where I need you to go pump this septic tank, and we'll figure out the rest of your route on someone else's. They are not surprised that that is happening, because I've warned them many, many times that, hey, this may happen. I need you to just get in the boat and start rowing with us. But there is some pushback still. At some point I can sense it. And then it just goes back to, over time, that trust is built and they ultimately do get in the boat and help. But yeah, their routes are changing throughout the day, and it's all about communication. Hey, if their routes change, I'm going to have me or my office manager call and say, heads up, this has changed. You'll see it on your job board, but didn't want you to be surprised when you came across it.
Another thing that comes up a lot is, and it could affect a route and it can affect customer services, lock gates, block units, units you can't service, units you can't find. How do you handle those, and how do you deal with letting the customer know?
Obviously, the benefit of ServiceCore is there is a note section to all of their jobs. So we want to make sure that me and my office manager collect all of the information and get all of the documentation up front to make it easy on our drivers. I don't want to say that we abuse the notes portion of the app, but we use it a lot to direct drivers to where the toilets are, to any lock gates, any locks on the toilet themselves. We do proactively ask when we get a new order, hey, is there going to be any lock on the toilet or lock on the gate itself? Can you provide that information so we don't have any issues? And then we do encourage our drivers to not only call the site contact if there's an issue, but also send a text. What we have found is they'll call and then it's always a he said, she said of, oh, I never got a call. So we tell them, send a text as well. And then if there's ever a miscommunication, we can say, hey, check your phone. We sent a text. We have it in writing that we did everything we could in our power to get to the servicing.
Do you have your drivers take pictures when you hit a lock gate or a blocked unit?
Yes, yeah, we have them upload photos as well, so we can show what the issue is. But ultimately, the text has been like the savior of all of this because people can't say they never got it.
When it comes to routing, there's you guys use a tool, ServiceCore, but there's also a bit of gut instinct that goes into these two. You know your routes well, you know your area well. How do you balance that between, hey, my gut says this, the software saying this?
Yeah, you learn it over time for sure on what is the best route and is this too much, and you just learn your big stops, especially you're like, hey, these are the big ones. These are the ones that have a water tank. These are the ones that have a waste tank. This one has 20 toilets at it. I know where the money comes from. I know what clients I need to do to make happy. And I prioritize those first and fill in the rest around them. Not saying every customer is not important, just some customers are more important than others. And I make sure that we have the best routes possible to make sure we do not miss the ones we need to hit. Put those first of the day, put those on drivers that I know will hit them, the ones that are most reliable. I know they're going to show up to work on time. Let's get those first, and then we can fill in the rest, which makes most sense.
What do you do to make sure that you're looking at your routes to see if they're profitable? Do you analyze that on a regular basis?
I don't analyze it as much as I should. I think we're in growth mode. So admittedly, my focus is on service first, profitability second. I think I would sacrifice profit to make sure that customers, especially new customers, are getting their service, not missing them. So for example, even if this stop or a job site is way out of the way and we miss it one day, I'm going to make sure that we put it on the schedule for the next day. We may lose money or be not profitable on that stop, but I want to set an expectation and build my brand up front, sacrificing a bit of profitability, knowing that that's going to be a customer for life. And I'll have a little bit more wiggle room on those misses a year from now versus focusing solely on profitability and routing now. I also understand that if we didn't build a good brand and continue to grow that the way we have, routes will become more dense. We'll get more clients. We'll have more stops on the route. So I can stomach some of this now, knowing that there's a end goal, a better future for us in terms of profitability.
Yeah, you guys are obviously in growth mode. And that was a great segue into my next question, because as you think about making those routes more dense by getting new customers, expanding your service area, do you ever have your drivers look at the competitors' units?
Yeah, some of them naturally do this. I tend to not talk about that as often with my drivers because I want them to focus on the task at hand and doing a great job at what they're currently doing. I understand that my words have a ton of power with our drivers. And if all of a sudden I say, let's go look at some of these toilets and praise them for that, then who knows how much of their day is going to be spent driving around looking at other toilets versus focusing on the job that they do. I will get some texts from drivers that say, hey, look at how terrible my competitors' toilets are. Here's a job site. And I'm very grateful for that when it happens. But I don't proactively stress that that is important for us. I have a tremendous sales manager whose job is that. So if I do happen to get a lead from one of my drivers, I will send it on to them or to her, and she takes care of business that way. But yeah, that's a long-winded way of saying I don't necessarily want to talk about that all that much with my drivers just because what I talk about becomes a priority.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that also goes back to the ownership. Like the more they feel ownership, they might just do it naturally. And obviously they're focused on making their stuff look beautiful. But hey, look at that
For
one
sure.
over there. Good opportunity.
Yeah,
Awesome.
exactly. Yeah, I love it. Most of my drivers have a ton of passion for being a part of halftime rentals. It's like their craft. And they are side salespeople for us. I just got a text the other day saying, "Hey, call this number." I was on a job site where they had us and another competitor on, and I went over to that superintendent and showed them how much better our toilets looked than theirs. And sure enough, that person called me. So I love the ownership and passion that they have for their craft.
As you look to the future of this industry, what do you think the number one challenge is moving forward?
I would say a couple things. One, I would say the barrier to entry seems to be getting higher in terms of a couple of things, but the barrier to entry in terms of how fast a business can scale and just the lack of patience that is I've seen in the industry. I think I've gotten very lucky with a few, like the natural disaster, and I've hired some great people who have really helped me accelerate my business. And so I think someone could look at me as an example and say, "Oh, that's the standard. Like, I want to get to 2 million in sales in 14 months, which is what we've done, which is amazing." I didn't expect to do that, but I think folks can get very disheartened very easily in this industry because of how hard the grind is up front. I also think another barrier to entry, finding land, just industrial land, is insane anywhere close to city limits. And that has really put a barrier on someone who wants to start and really bootstrap it. Like, finding good land less than $1 million close to city limits is very hard to find where you can properly operate a porta potty business. And then two, I would say the I don't know how to word this correctly, but the lack of folks in a non-traditional porta potty blue collar background that are willing to start this business is few and far between. And I love it because I think I come in with new ideas and a fresh lens on it. Came from a very, very corporate America background. But I see a lot of my competitors pass down generation to generation, and it is a threat to the way porta potty businesses can expand or can grow or can market. And I welcome all the competition and new ideas, but I think some of the ideas kind of become a little bit stale and recirculated because of the type of nature the owners are in.
Last question. If you were to give advice to a fellow operator that is, just getting into that growth mode as it pertains to routing, what would your advice be?
My advice would be twofold. One, always touch your routes every night. There is stuff that happens throughout the day that I could ignore, such as a stop or it gets missed or a delivery comes on the route. I touch my routes every single night, whether it's 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour. I make sure they are optimized for the next day. So that would be my first one. Is you want to be able to provide the best if you want to provide the best customer service, you got to do the legwork up front to make sure that the shit gets done the way that it should get done. And then two, I would encourage folks in growth mode to sacrifice profit for service. So if something gets missed, don't be afraid to go back to it the next day or 2 days later, even if that means it's way out of your way. Like, you want to provide great service, not be known for someone that misses stops just because you're focused on the bottom line.
Awesome. Well, Chad, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us on this episode. I think folks are going to take away some good pearls, and we will see you on the next one.